She doesn't scream at first. The house swallows sound too well. It's a narrow rental on East New York Street in the fall of 1965. Peeling paint, a sagging porch, and a basement that keeps secrets. Somewhere inside, a 16-year-old girl gathers breath between waves of pain and tries to remember the world outside the door. She presses her cheek to the concrete and thinks about movie matinees, cotton candy, and holding her little sister's hand on the walk home. She counts to 10, then 20, waiting for the next voice to decide what happens to her. Outside, late summer cicadas drone, indifferent, as if the world could sing through any closed window. Sylvia Likens arrived in July with her sister Jenny after their parents took a carnival job that moved week to week. Their names were Lester and Betty Likens, always counting dollars and miles, promising to be back soon. They were left with a caretaker who promised to treat them like her own. At first, there were chores and thin dinners and the bustle of a crowded house. Then, the air changed. The woman of the house, Gertrude Banishevsky, grew brittle, nursing disappointments that had nothing to do with Sylvia, but found Sylvia anyway. Words sharpened, accusations flared. The first slap landed with surprise, as if even the hand wasn't sure what it had done until the skin stung. The rhythm spread. Older children watched and copied, eager and fearful at the same time. Neighborhood boys drifted in through the back door like weather. Someone laughed. Someone looked away. Sylvia learned that a room can vote against you without ever raising a hand. She was punished for things she didn't do, then for things she could never do. Eat fast enough, stand straight enough, take up less space than a person takes. Jenny, careful with her polio-weakened leg, tried to help and was pushed back by the same tide. Days blurred into a calendar of small humiliations and long, aching hours. There were moments upstairs when the house pretended to be a home, daytime television buzzing, a baby crying, a pan rattling on the stove. Then a single remark tilted the room, and the steps down to the basement opened like a trap. The threshold stole light. The floor smelled faintly of iron. The girl who loved roller rinks and church socials became a task list. Sylvia, fetch this. Sylvia, kneel there. Sylvia, repeat what we tell you. It did not take monsters out of legend. It took a leader who gave permission, a crowd eager to belong, and a target who could not escape. The punishments grew creative, then ritual. Cold baths when her body shook already. Food withheld and then set just out of reach. Orders given in bored voices, as if cruelty were a chore to cross off before bedtime. Someone struck her to a rhythm that made sense only inside that house. Someone told her to apologize for other people's anger. She did, hoping obedience might buy her a softer night. People nearby saw slivers. A neighbor heard thuds and dismissed them. A mail carrier glimpsed a pale face at a window and chose his route. Children whispered on porches about the strange house and then rode their bikes away. The street kept moving, and inside, a story rehearsed itself scene by scene. When Jenny worked up the courage to ask for help, a hard look warned her that the people with keys were listening. Fear became a leash. By October, the basement had become a country with its own laws. The girl who entered it was renamed, redefined, reduced, and then marked. A boy from down the street, coy, pressed a heated needle to her skin while others watched and turned a lie into a label, trying to make the bruise look like a verdict. There was a letter forced on Sylvia to write, a little fiction about running away with boys, a cover story in case anyone finally asked why a 16-year-old had vanished from the living room. Richard, another boy who should have been nowhere near any of this, vouched for the lie as if the ash of it weren't still cooling. The basement walls took the smoke and said nothing. The letters pressed into her skin claimed to be truth and were not. The body keeps records more honest than any letter. Sylvia's strength slipped like coins through a hole in her pocket. She fell. She was lifted. She was ordered to stand and could not. Someone told her to wash and she tried because she was still Sylvia, the girl who did what she was asked. She apologized for the mess that wasn't hers. She asked for water. She asked for Jenny. She asked, at the end, for the kind of help the house didn't know how to give. On the last morning she had, October 26th, 1965, the house ran out of instructions. The people who made themselves her keepers were suddenly face to face with every choice they'd made. Panic is loud. It rattles pans, scrapes chairs, mangles a phone call. A policeman stepped into the stale air of the front room and listened to a story about a runaway. He looked past it, toward the basement door. Behind him, a smaller voice found courage. "Get me out of here and I'll tell you everything," Jenny whispered, and the room finally had to listen. Everything arrived like a storm breaking. The basement told it. The marks on Sylvia's body told it. The letter on the table told it. Names were gathered: Gertrude, Yes, and Paula, and the boys who had drifted in and out and found themselves part of something they could no longer explain away. A tale that wanted to stay contained inside one address spilled into a city. Reporters wrote headlines. Neighbors traded shame and outrage on their porches. A courtroom filled with the sound of adults trying to separate cruelty from excuses. Witnesses shifted in the stand, eyes fixed on their laps when the photographs appeared, language breaking under the weight of what had been done. The law moved the way the law moves, slow, with bursts of heat when someone cried or an exhibit passed hand to hand. There were convictions. There were sentences. The woman in charge was judged for what she did and for what she allowed. Some of the kids who obeyed her will were judged too, learning late that following orders is not a shield, that laughter does not erase the bruise it rode in on. Years would pass. People would change addresses, change haircuts, change the stories they told about where they were when the line was crossed. Paper can close a case. It cannot close a wound. Justice, though, is not a time machine. It cannot send a hand back down those stairs. It cannot give Jenny a different summer or return Sylvia the ordinary teenage life she earned simply by being herself. What it can do is make a record and leave a warning. The distance between a normal house and a terrible one is not as wide as we prefer to think. Groups can make us brave or make us cruel, depending on the leader we follow and the line we refuse to cross. A neighbor's business is sometimes your business, no matter how much we pretend otherwise. Sometimes, late, I picture the street the night after the police left, porch lights on, curtains lifted, the whole block listening to itself breathe. In one upstairs room, Jenny stares at the ceiling and tries to make it into a sky. Somewhere far away, parents who trusted the wrong promise are racing home through the dark, wishing for a clock you cannot rewind. And somewhere in our own towns, even now, a girl sits in a quiet room and waits for someone to notice. The world outside the door is still there. She is still hoping it finds her. So if this story finds you when a door seems like none of your concern, put your hand on it anyway. Knock. Ask the question. Be the interruption. The difference between cruelty and mercy can be as small as the time it takes to speak up. Sylvia never stopped asking for morning. We can at least meet the daylight she kept wishing for with open eyes. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.